Hi, and welcome to Main Street AI, the podcast where traditional businesses are quietly revolutionizing their operations with artificial intelligence and winning. In this podcast, I sit down with industry leaders from law firms and professional services and other Main Street businesses to explore their AI journey. We dive into the opportunities they see, the challenges they're navigating, and the real impact of AI on their industries. Whether you're AI curious or ready to implement, this show brings you insights from leaders who are actually using this technology to serve customers better, empower employees, and drive profitable growth. David Lizerbram has practiced business law in California for 23 years with over 800 trademark filings. He uses AI extensively for ideation, research, and double-checking work, but always with attorney verification. His framework is simple. Attorneys who refuse tools that improve client outcomes aren't meeting their professional obligations. Now he's proving what AI makes possible. David's three-person firm is the first in the world taking on predatory underage gambling companies, complex litigation that would have been impossible just a few years ago. AI handles research, organization, and document preparation, freeing experienced attorneys to focus on strategy and client impact. David's vision: automate repetitive work so attorneys can focus on understanding client needs, solving novel problems, and making real-world impact on people's lives. Let's dive in. Hi, welcome back to the Main Street AI podcast. This is Stephen Whittier with Satori Coach IO, and today I'm joined by David Lizerbram from the Schenk Law Firm. David, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for letting me talk to your audience.
Excellent. Could you tell me a little bit about what you do with your firm, your background, and just fill everybody in so they have a good sense of your specialty?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my background is I have been practicing law here in California for 2002, so 23 years, give or take. I think I got my bar license 23 years ago next week. So, so I practice business law. I'm a business transactional attorney, so I represent companies, often startups, but sometimes more established companies, everything from individuals, solo entrepreneurs, all the way up through publicly traded entities. I do everything from business formations, contracts, transactions, mergers and acquisitions, a lot of intellectual property, so mostly trademarks, brand names, business names, logos, slogans, things like that. I more or less operate as outside counsel for businesses, so meaning they don't have an attorney on staff. I'm the person they call or email or text or whatever when they need legal help. Sometimes they do have attorneys on staff, but I do things that that person may not do. I'm actually merging with another firm, sort of a new firm. It's going to be the Schenk Law Firm, and that's kind of news, so to speak, after having my own practice for 20 years. And the firm's going to be focused. I'm going to be heading up the business transactional advisory practice area. The firm also is going to be working on personal injury and mass torts, so litigation. I don't do any litigation, but that's the litigation side. Happy to talk about that as well. There's sort of AI impacts all over the place and all these different things we're doing, but that's a general scope of the type of work that I do and that the firm is going to be doing.
And David, what would you say most people who are outside of the legal industry tend to misunderstand or maybe misrepresent about this type of space?
Yeah, good question. In terms of the business sort of practice area, a lot of people are, when they're a startup, a new founder, a new entrepreneur, which I work with people in all different stages, serial entrepreneurs and so forth, but when they're new, learning how to work with an attorney is sort of a skill. Not everybody is going to be good at it right away, and not every attorney is going to be the right fit for everybody. It's got to be part of your team and a sort of trusted counselor. So taking the time to establish that relationship is important. Work with an attorney who could kind of dig below the surface a little bit and figure out what you and your business really need is important. I try to always do that. Sometimes a client, especially a new client, they may come and say, okay, I need this, this, and this. And often that's not 100% what turns out to be the case. Often there are other needs. It doesn't mean it necessarily costs more or anything like that or takes more time. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But you know, um, sort of like you wouldn't necessarily go to your doctor and say, okay, I've diagnosed myself. This is what I have, and this is what I need.
Right.
You can certainly go and say, hey, here's the issues I'm dealing with, or here's what I'm planning to do, etc. And then sort of open that dialogue. But the more the client is kind of open to what direction it's going to take, typically the better the conversation goes.
Right. Makes perfect sense. A lot of times that's why they're coming to you, right? Is for your expertise. So they may not know what they don't know.
Yeah.
They tell you what they think they need, but as you get into
Sure.
it, yeah, you unearth some completely different needs. Pivoting over to the AI question, what sort of trends are you seeing in the industry, or even in your own firm, in terms of your thoughts on it, maybe how you've used it or not used it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. Primarily, we're going to be talking, I think, about LLMs. AI is sort of a broad category technologically, machine learning and all those things. That that doesn't really come to play so much in what I'm doing. It's more the LLMs, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. So there's kind of how we're using it, how clients are using it, what the industry looks like, etc. Internally, we use AI, primarily ChatGPT, Claude, that kind of thing, all the time to sort of ideate, to sort of double check the work, things like that. I was speaking to a class of law students last week, and I was telling them my opinion, which is that an attorney has an ethical obligation to represent their client as best as they can. So if there's a tool that's available that can help that attorney get a better result, a better outcome for that client, if they don't use it, within reason, they're not, in my opinion, necessarily fulfilling their ethical obligations. So somebody just says, well, I'm never going to use this. An attorney has to keep up to speed with changes in the world outside of, the law books and what you learned in law school many years ago. So we use it in all different types of ways. I'm not having it do my work for me, but, to the extent that it can supplement, help, make suggestions, catch things that I might not have noticed, etc., that's great. I'm sure you've heard that, there's hallucinations. I wouldn't rely on current generations of AI for, just the output they put out in terms of legal research. But there are ways to do it that are helpful. If there's a list of cases, I might have it do a deep research report on the cases, and that typically will clear out a lot of the hallucinations. You still have to double check. That's the ethical obligation, but that would be true if I had a young attorney or paralegal or somebody coming up with stuff. I would need to double check that too. So that's something different. On the client side, lots of my clients, of course, are using AI. It's kind of funny sometimes, because sometimes somebody will say, oh, I wrote this out. I wanted to get your thoughts on this that I wrote. And it's clearly written by ChatGPT. You could tell from the M dashes and the, bold and whatever, all the different formatting quirks. Or just because I've worked with this client for years and they've never written anything that reads like this before. So, it's like, okay, let's just be honest with each other with what we're doing here. There's no use hiding the ball, and that's totally fine. I encourage my clients to use whatever tools they can to, articulate to an attorney or whoever what it is they're trying to do, or to get as far along the process before they have to bring somebody in. I don't have any problem with that. I think it's great. Literally right before we got on this podcast, a client sent me kind of a document that they said, hey, I can use the ChatGPT to create this. That's great. It was more in the lines of what I would consider bullet points than a full set of corporate documents that they need. But it was very helpful because it kind of outlined their thinking and covered a lot of the scope. And then I was able to go and, expand on it. Say, okay, here's what I think you need now. It created a positive dialogue. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Of course, there is the sort of area of concern or sort of threat, I guess, for my industry, in the sense of being replaced by robots robot lawyers, and that is a concern at a kind of lower level. I mean, it's definitely something that I would talk very seriously about with somebody who's going into law school, for example. What is it you want to do, and what is the likelihood that that job can exist in 5 years or whatever? Because we are able to scale using AI tools, and scale when you're scaling using technology. That means maybe on some level you're not hiring somebody to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it just means we're doing more work than we can otherwise do with the resources we have. But nonetheless, at some junior level there is concern about how are people going to learn and go through the years of training before they get to obviously a much higher level. I've been doing this for many years, so a lot of what I do is really speaking to the client directly and really understanding their needs and getting to know them and their businesses. And that's, at this point, not as easily replaced. And then I'm also making changes and pivots to my business to kind of try to stay ahead of things. But it's interesting times.
For sure, yeah. And you already anticipated my question about any fears or uncertainties, and you already touched on that. So conversely, what are you most excited about with the potential of AI for the field?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about, I think there's an optimistic case. Negative cases about AI are easily found out there, and that's fine. I'm not saying one's right or wrong, but from the optimistic perspective, you can imagine a world where new tools are enabling new businesses, enabling people to come up with new concepts, new products, new services, whatever. That creates a larger surface area for business law. More things are happening, and that means that there's going to be more need for, lawyers, accountants, whatever, various people involved, and some of their work will be replaced by the same tools that are creating these businesses, but it's creating new opportunities. So I think I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the opportunities that we have to scale, because there's just things that we've been doing that we could never have done 2 or 3 years ago. And it's that's exciting for us, because we're just really involved in a lot of new projects that really wouldn't have made sense for us to be engaged in as a kind of small new law firm. But hopefully you're going to be really valuable and really make a positive impact in the world. I could talk about that a little bit if you want, but I think we've kind of unlocked some things that are very exciting for us, and hopefully are going to be a net positive.
Yes, maybe one way of exploring that is, if you were to fast forward 5 years from now, what do you think is going to look different with what you do, and what will still be pretty much the same?
Yeah, I mean, look, the more you can automate repetitive work, the better off we are, I think, in general. I'm sure people were really happy when a tractor came along. They didn't have to push behind a mule. Most places in the world where people are, living in a less developed, economically developed environment, are happy when new tools come along to take some of the labor off their hands. And that goes for intellectual labor as well as physical labor, of course, not, trying to diminish any of that. I'm just saying, it goes all down the line. We used to, have some, Dickensian orphan delivering handwritten messages across London. And now, you send me a text message, everybody, nobody wants to go back to the old version of that, right? So there is a little bit of a status quo bias, meaning we look at the world now and we just naturally assume that's the way it always was. And anything that's different is taking a job away or taking an opportunity away. But nobody wants to really go back, for the most part, to many. And look, people have nostalgic views about the past, and there's things that are not perfect now that, we can certainly look back to parts of the past and see what was value that may have been discarded we can bring back. But in terms of people doing physical labor and things like that, I think, most of that is for the positive. So I don't know if that was exactly an answer to your question, but it does kind of make me excited to just see what new opportunities are available when sort of drudgery repetitive work, whether in the law or any other field, is there to push of a button. And so I like to spend my time coming up with new concepts, working with clients to help them grow their businesses and achieve whatever their goals are, understanding their needs, dealing with interesting, novel challenges. That's, at this stage of my career, that's what I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
The less time I have to spend doing things that are a little bit more repetitive, I've done it a million times, so that's better for me.
Yes, absolutely. And now I'll dive in a little bit more into your practice as it stands right now. What would you say that you do or your firm does extraordinarily well, or makes it different from others?
Extraordinarily well. Well, in terms of what I do, I've worked with hundreds of businesses. Let's just say, for example, I do a lot of trademark work. I have, over, last I checked, 800 trademark filings with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So, that's an area where many businesses have needs in that area. Let's just say trademarks having to do with their brand names or logos. They may be establishing a new brand or dealing with a dispute or whatever. That's the kind of thing that's hard to replicate, whether by a human or by an AI. I've just done it a lot. So you get a lot of reps and you're pretty good at something. Same thing with contracts, negotiations, things like that. My business partners, one of my business partners, Fred Schenk, was the lead attorney for the state of California in the tobacco litigation, and helped to recover billions of dollars for the state. Has recovered many billions of dollars for clients over the years, and wrongful death, auto accidents, asbestos, mesothelioma, and so there's three partners in the firm. Between all of us, we've got, 70 or so years of practice, and different types of expertise. So I think that's valuable, especially when there are new technologies and things popping up everywhere. Having sort of the people that have done it for many, many years and have a lot of experience in their particular practice areas, that's sort of a moat, meaning it's not easy to replicate. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah. From your client's perspective, what are the sorts of things you hear positive from your clients, like over and over again, that you feel like really defines what you do?
Being a business attorney, may seem a little bit sometimes dry, dealing with, contracts or something all day long. And I'm not saying that's not part of it, but, my clients are real people dealing with real issues. And there's another person often on the other side negotiating or whatever. They may be a big company, they may be a government entity, they may be an individual, they may be whatever. But very often when my clients come to me, with a business issue, a concern, a problem, whatever, they're stressed about it. It's making them anxious. They're not sleeping well. It's affecting their marriage. I really get into my clients about what's really going on in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it could be affecting their health, whatever it may be. And whenever I have a conversation, I'm fortunate to have these, where, at the end of the conversation, the client says, wow, I can hear it in their voice. Wow, I feel so much better about this. I see the path. I think this is going to help us solve this problem, or this is going to get me where I need to go. And you can tell that it's really having a real material impact on their overall well-being and the people around them, the people on their team, their family, whatever it may be. That, I don't mean to be corny, but that is really meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And, it's not saving the world, but that's something that I really appreciate. So again, that's the kind of thing that if AI frees me up to do more of that,
yes,
great.
That's the key.
So
right?
wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, it's where the human element can really come into play.
Yeah.
And then in terms of growth, I'll turn to that. What stage of growth are you in right now, and where would you like to be in the next 12 months or so?
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're sort of forming this new firm. So I've had my own practice for 20 years. It was 20 years, a month ago. And so we're treating it like a brand new startup, even though I'm bringing over all my clients, and we have 3 attorneys with, years of experience and background and clients and things like that. So that's really fun, because to be in startup mode Without the total desperation, but to still be looking at it that way, we're meeting tons of people and reconnecting with people. So that's a lot of fun. So that's kind of where we are. And then in terms of where we want to be, in 12 months, obviously we want to establish and grow this new practice and this sort of brand for legal excellence. And then we're doing projects like that I said, like we could never have done before. For example, a big project we're working on, which is very different from anything I've done, but the litigation attorneys have a lot more experience in this area, is just to kind of give this the short version of the story. I have an 8-year-old son. He loves baseball. That's his life, is baseball. He has his own baseball podcast, which is called Little Slugger. I'll plug that. He plays Little League. I'm the coach. It's really wonderful. And so he consumes a lot of baseball content, whether it's watching games, whether it's watching, YouTube about baseball. Of course, my wife and I are, very careful about what he's watching. But nonetheless, they're exposed to a lot of content around gambling. If anybody who's a sports fan or watches any sports, you can't escape it. It's everywhere online. It's available on your phone. And a consenting adult who engages in gambling and they know what they're doing, whatever, they're not being defrauded. I don't have a problem with that, of course. That's not, my issue. But to the extent that these apps, and we've been, learned a lot about how children, minors, primarily teenagers, mostly boys, are being suckered into this. And these apps are not following best practices to make sure that only adults are able to access their platforms. They're kids, I'm calling them kids, even though they may be 16, 17, 15, whatever, are losing real money, having their lives destroyed by these predatory companies. Both sports gambling and casino type gaming, which I didn't even know existed online, but you can, if you're clever enough, and these kids are very clever, you can play roulette, blackjack, any kind of casino type game for real money online using these offshore casinos. So there's a whole vast world that's going on out there. So we are the first firm in the world that we know of. And we've really looked into this. We spent the whole last year doing due diligence on this to hold these companies accountable. We are bringing lawsuits. We've signed up clients, found young people who've unfortunately had terrible stories of their lives, being ruined, and their families being affected, their future, etc., by these predators. Again, if somebody wants to go to Las Vegas and, play blackjack and they're an adult or whatever, that's, one thing, or bet on a, March Madness, that's, again, different situation. But to the extent these companies are going after children, they're not the good guys. And so we are engaged in doing this. We're working with other attorneys, but we are spearheading this. We have a website, don'tbetonthat.com, where people can find more information. But we've been able to do all this over the last year as a small 3-person firm, just as a startup, while we're also servicing current clients through the use of AI tools to help ideate, to help do research, not necessarily legal research per se, but just researching articles and academic papers on this subject and finding who to connect with and the structures of these companies, and all these different things, and then just helping us to put our own documents together, get our thoughts organized, communicate with each other. We never would have been able to take this on as a smaller firm to kind of launch this using a tool that existed only 3, 4, 5 years ago. We just never would have been able to do it. So it's very exciting, and there's more of that down the line. But it's just an example of how you can look at the tools that are available and hopefully try to think, okay, not just how does this help me do what I was doing yesterday, but a little bit better, faster, cheaper, but also what can I do now that I couldn't have ever done before?
That's really interesting. And then with the merger and your ability to go into these new areas, just again, coming back to growth, are you thinking, or do you have any, say, like even a percentage growth target for the next year, like 10%?
Well, when your new firm is starting at 0, the numbers don't really apply.
It's a reboot.
Yeah, it's 0 to 1 is where we're at right now.
Gotcha. If you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing in the business, like if you were to think about like theory of constraints, we've got one kind of primary constraint right now to help you grow, what would you say that is?
Look, if the AI labs continue to reduce the hallucination issue and can improve the accuracy of results when people are talking about, when you're getting information about statutes, litigation, and research and things like that, that's only going to be more helpful because it's really a bottleneck right now. And I know that the numbers have been improving, but I still get false results all the time. So to the extent that that problem can be mitigated, that would be, I think, very helpful.
Right. For sure, there are ways to do it. It's one of the challenges where, and this gets into the whole topic. I've had multiple conversations on this podcast about this with attorneys with document drafting, but not actually creating those proper controls and parameters and then not reviewing it, which you already mentioned before.
Right.
That's you attorneys still have to attorney, right? So
yeah, sure.
Big piece of it. And then in terms of acquisition, right now, you could be different. You can speak to this. Most of the time when I'm speaking to those who are in business law, they tend to be heavily referral based. Since you're bringing on the partner with the other firm that's bringing personal injury and things like that, are you using any other forms of marketing or advertising?
Yeah, well, the business area is very much referral and network based. But we've started to get clients who found us through LLMs. Mm-hmm. And we're not, that started happening before we even thought about really deeply about LLM or GEO optimization. So obviously we're building a new website. We've been doing all these things. So you want to be oriented towards the newest technology. To the extent that somebody asks Gemini or whoever, what's the solution to this issue, or is there a lawyer who does this, or what law firms do that, and it provides us with an answer that's helpful to us. Mm-hmm. We're going to be doing some more marketing and things like that around specific areas such as this underage gambling, online addiction matter. But yeah, it's kind of it's a little bit of an open field for us right now, so we're kind of just seeing what works.
Great. Excellent. And then where I always like to finish, David, is I ask about, minus the the business goals, the metrics, things like that. You already talked a little bit about what you find meaningful with your client work, but this question is more just like your personal drive that goes beyond the business itself, the thing that gives you passion about what you do, wakes you up in the morning. What would you say that is?
Yeah, I mean, I and my partners love coming up with new ideas, new opportunities, thinking about things that, we don't see other people in our field doing. That's really exciting. You're building something, you're creating things, making connections, and, all towards goals that we think are positive. Meaning if I'm working with a business client and they're, starting a business, or they've worked for years and now they're selling a business, having an exit, those things are big life goals for them.
Yes.
And so helping to work with them to do that, that's very satisfying. Identifying issues that other people may not have noticed or thought about, like this underage gambling thing that just nobody was talking about a year ago. It's
great example.
That's a real harm that's happening to real people. And most of the people that we've talked to, it never even occurred to them that they could go to a lawyer. You know what I mean? Like that's a thing, that there's a solution out there. It just is a problem. And so, finding situations where there's opportunities to help somebody who's building something, or to help get a remedy for a harm that's been done to somebody, that's that's what we're really excited about, continue to work on.
Fantastic. Excellent. That's some great stuff. I really appreciate it, David. How can people get in contact with you? I know you probably want to give out the the current info and maybe the new firm contact info.
Yeah, well, we have a website, schenklawfirm.com. That's SCHENK law firm. If you Google my name, David Lizerbram, there's only one David Lizerbram in the world, and you don't have to spell it perfectly. It'll come up. I'm very easily found. There's a lot of me on the internet talking about legal issues, so any of those things will get back to me. And if you, of course, you're listening and you or somebody else may have been affected by the gambling issue specifically, you can go to don'tbetonthat.com and find all the information about that there.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Take care.